46% Johnnie Walker finished in a rye cask. I'll be having some of that. Join me today for this episode of the Neckpour, where I get this open and give you my first impressions. My name's Lewis, and welcome to the Neckpour, the whiskey review channel, where I give you my thoughts and opinions on a particular bottle of whiskey, from the Neckpour all the way down to the Dregs. And you join me here today to get a new Neckpour of this bottle opened, a Johnnie Walker Rye Cask Finish from their Select Cask series. This bowl has been out of production for a little while and might be slightly challenging to get your hands on, but I think partly inspired by our trip to the Johnnie Walker experience in Edinburgh. I saw this on auction and couldn't say no when it was going at such a good price. So let's get this open and get it poured, and then we'll have a little chat about it. As with a lot of Johnnie Walkers, there won't be a cork pop for this one, because it is a screw top bottle, but quite stylish, quite similar in design actually to the celebratory series, the 200th anniversary one. And I thought I'd bring out my Glencairn that I picked up at the experience to taste it in. Let's get this open. Quite a nice little Glencairn there. You'll probably see it up close in a bit of the slow-mo footage later. But yeah, pretty nice. Although I do have to say, of all the whiskey experiences we went on, Johnnie Walker was the only one where you had to buy a glass to take home with you. Everywhere else actually gave you one for free. So maybe it's just a sign of how Diageo's share price is doing at the moment, that they need to get every last little bit out of you. But yeah, let's get this open, pour ourselves a little drop, and I'll give you a little bit of chat about what we think. And although it is incredibly efficient, is the screw top, it makes a very good seal, there's no risk of the cork going off, it's great for long-term storage. It just doesn't have the theatre of a cork, does it? Let's be honest. But no, as I said, whilst we were up in Scotland, we did the tour at the Johnnie Walker experience, and yeah, it was actually really interesting. I don't think it's necessarily set up for people like myself or people like yourselves that are watching this, because we're probably a little bit more on the nerdy side of the whiskey world, and I think this is much more set up for tourists. But I did still have a good time. It was like, you know, going to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, but for whiskey. It was, yeah, really interesting. We were led around by Charlotte, who was a really good kind of tour guide. And we went through, you know, production, the story of Johnnie Walker, and then had a nice little tasting. I tried both of the seasonal expressions whilst we were there in the tasting room. And as you've seen, I've put some photos up as I talk through this little bit, and they were both really, really good, but I'm not sure they were 110 quid good, and that's what the asking price was for them. Plus Edinburgh was the first stop on our tour, and I didn't want to carry them around for the rest of the trip, so we did say no to picking anything up there, and I think that also further inspired me to have a bid on this. I'm actually quite excited by this. Rye is by far my favourite American cask. It's by far my favourite American whiskey. Bourbon for me is a little bit too sweet as a drink. I think the herbaceousness of a rye, that slightly more savoury note, really appeals to me. And rye finish or rye mature scotches, the couple that I've tried I've really enjoyed. However, it's not something I'm super well versed in. But yeah, that's sort of the reasoning why I bought the bottle. And again, anytime I see Johnnie Walkers at 46% and above, I get very interested. Again, anytime I see any of those big name whiskies presented in a better way, I'm always interested, because there is intrinsic value to Johnnie Walker. And, you know, Black Label is a really solid drinking whiskey, but Black Label at 46% would be much better whiskey. And to me, that's what I always like to think when I pick these up. Is it going to be that bottle that takes that experience just to that slightly higher level? I mean, I really enjoyed the celebratory blend. Really am still enjoying it. And it's really good stuff. But what I want to find is something that's a little bit more accessible and available price-wise that they're putting out that we can get involved in that's really good. So if you guys have got any thoughts, drop them down in the comments. I'll be sure to check them out. But yeah, let's get this up. I'm not going to comment on the colour. Nothing about natural colour on here. Again, there's nothing about non-chill filtered, but being 46%, it might be non-chill filtered. However, who knows? But yeah, let's get our noses in this and see what we think. There is a slight spiciness there from the rye in a kind of peppery, like a white pepper though. Lots and lots of vanillins, and I'd say cream on the nose. So yeah, vanilla, cream, pepper, I think are the three things I'm pulling out there. I mean, it's behaving reasonably nicely in the glass for 46%. It doesn't look too thin and had too much stripped out of it, but I think it has, if not chill filtered, it's at least been very, very heavily filtered. Let's give it a little taste. Oh, wow. That rye cask, very, very active. It is only a finish in the rye cask. This was actually aged firstly in first fill bourbon barrels and then finished in the rye casks. It doesn't actually state how long the finish was on here. But yeah, it must have been super active. I'm getting lots and lots of charred oak, you know, lots of that kind of virgin oak, charred oak, that real woody sort of bite on the palate. It's got a lovely wood note to it, and it has got a little bit of menthol, a little bit of eucalyptus, which is quite indicative of a rye, and lots of toffee, caramel, those kind of traditional bourbony rye sort of flavors. And yeah, that's really enjoyable. Again, I think the finish is really convincing me that if it's not chill filtered, it was certainly run through the chill filtration machine, just not quite as cold, because it is quite short. It's got a very drying woody note to it. It's almost pencil shavings on the finish. Is that smell of pencil shavings or MDF? If you've ever cut MDF, it's that same thing, but not necessarily in a bad way. And then it leaves you with lots of vanilla and a little bit of creaminess, which is odd because being creamy but yet still short at the same time, whereas I normally associate creamy with that big, oily, fatty mouthful that it leaves you with, whereas this is kind of creamy and then it goes through that really drying wood and then leaves your mouth almost empty. But no, it's kind of everything I thought it was going to be, but just slightly too filtered for me, I think, because just a few less processes done to this and this would be spectacular. This would be really great stuff, but it's just been slightly over engineered and slightly over tampered with that leaves the thing just a little bit too short and a little bit flat. But it's probably the most woody whiskey I own. And at 10 years, that's pretty young to be. So I've got some older whiskies that are much less affected by the wood. So I don't know if this has also been filled in, maybe they were slightly smaller casks as well. Because to have done this in 10 years, they either must have been some of the most active casks Diageo own, or it was, quarter casks or something like that. Because it's extraordinarily woody. It's got that lovely kind of charcoal note, and then it's got all those beautiful rye, savoury, spicy flavours, but slightly too filtered for my liking. But it's a damn good effort, and I'm happy to have picked this up. It was £40.20 delivered to my door. That's with all the auction fees paid, delivery, everything like that. And it was just the one bottle I picked up, so the delivery fees are quite high for it. Nearly 12 quid of that price was just delivery, which, means it was a reasonably well-priced bottle of whiskey that I got slightly stung for delivery for. Again, when you're looking at these things on auction, please do always take those additional fees in mind, because the £25 hammer price wasn't the final price for this, as much as I wanted it to be. But no, I still think that's good value. It's easy drinking and it's interesting. And again, if you've got someone, that's really into American whiskey and bourbons and ryes, this is a perfect gateway into Scotch, because it's got all of the Scotch flavours, but also kind of all of the American whiskey flavours at the same time. And they actually marry really quite well in this whiskey. It's unpeated, so it's super approachable, or very lightly peated, if at all, And it's a pretty good drop. I'm not going to say I wholeheartedly recommend it, but if you guys do come across a bottle of this and it is at a good price, because there are a couple of sites that still stock this that are selling them at crazy prices just because of the limited availability, and I wouldn't pay any of those prices. But if I saw another bottle of this again at a reasonable price once this is gone, I'd certainly think about picking it up, that's for sure. But before I waffle too much further on with this one, I'd just like to say to anyone that's still watching at this point, thank you so much for tuning in and watching. It means a lot to me. If you're enjoying the content, drop a like down below. If you've got thoughts on this particular bottle, anything Johnnie Walker, or there's just anything you'd like to see me review, drop it in the comments below. I'll be sure to get back to you. And if you're really enjoying, please do hit the subscribe and the notification bell so you're notified next time I post. Again, it means a whole lot to me. Other than that, I'd just like to say I'd love to see you join me again for another episode of the Neckpour, the Dregs, or just my thoughts and opinions on whiskey. But until then, cheers, Salancha, and I'll see you again.